Yeah, we have a pretty cool episode. Today we're talking to Barry Nelson, from CEO and co-founder or founder of FactorLab. Topics around technology, but I think you wanted to kind of give the warning or lack of warning that it isn't a techie talk.
Yeah, that was kind of the most fun thing about this conversation too. So just because it has the word technology in it, and we're talking with a founder of a technology company, doesn't mean you have to be a data scientist or anybody that is even remotely techie to get something from this conversation. It is the most non-tech tech conversation that we've had on Safeonomics, and I think it's really fantastic. If you're a safety professional that is wanting to understand how to bridge those language barriers and language gaps that exist in your organization with regards to operations and management and all the other departments in between, this is definitely a conversation for you. And Barry's such an easygoing guy to talk with and listen to. Fantastic. So hope you enjoy it.
Hey, I'm Scott Cuthbert, CEO and co-founder of Safeopedia.
And I'm Gabe Encarnacion, Vice President of BBL Safety.
And we're pleased that you're joining us today for, what is it? We're episode 5,
Yeah.
I think. Wow.
Yeah, episode 5, 15, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's
I
exciting.
don't count these things.
Yeah, well, we have a special guest today, Barry Nelson, who's a founder and CEO of FactorLab, and we're going to be talking about technology, executive buy-in, pros and cons of safety professionals kind of diving in and getting to be comfortable and confident leveraging technology. So I want to give a shout out. I think Gabe, we're probably up to like 3 or 4 subscribers now. I know your mom is one of them.
So. Yeah, my mom's one. My mom's one. So thank you, Mom.
Yeah, give your mom a shout out. I'm sure my mom would listen if she knew what a podcast was, but she doesn't. So, but yeah, without further ado, let's turn it over to Barry. Let him do a quick intro, and then we'll dive into the discussion.
Well, thanks very much. I'm glad that I will be the 5th subscriber, so that'll be good. I can, listen to this over and over again as I try and fall asleep. So that'll be good. I'm Barry, CEO and founder of FactorLab. Thank you so much, Scott and Gabe, for letting me be a part of the conversation. So looking forward to the dialogue.
Us too.
Great. So yeah, let's jump in. I mean, Barry, you got a tremendous amount of experience. You were at Honeywell for a number of years. You were president and CEO at Predictive Analytics or Predictive Solutions, sorry, as well. And then your time obviously with FactorLab. So dealing with a lot of, I'm sure, challenges as far as getting people on board with the idea of investing and implementing technology. So can you kind of walk us through maybe that experience, what you've seen kind of as an evolution as far as companies, getting behind, supporting and buying into technology, where they were, where they are now, and what you see going forward?
Sure. Those are a lot of questions.
A loaded question. Sorry.
So
wasn't well thought out.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's okay. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a fascinating topic, which is, hey, what, and as a safety professional or anybody, you're trying to buy some safety technology. How do you get it done, right? How does and why is it hard, and why? And I have some thoughts on that, if that's where we're going, and hopefully they'll be useful. And I also think hopefully we have some time to talk about this today too. I think we're at a very transitional point in the use of technology in our space. And I think there's a and that's going to be, and it's so important. Maybe that's why this conversation is important, because now more than ever, everybody should be thinking about, how am I going to use these new tools to accomplish my objective? But I'll start with this is where you want to go. I'd love your points of view on this. I think the biggest challenge that anybody makes when they try and buy technology, safety technology specifically, is they try and buy technology. Nobody wants or needs any technology. And if you go to someone and you ask them, hey, can I buy some technology? The answer is going to almost be always no. And then we've heard all this sort of third grade level advice of like, well, you're going to buy some technology, you need to have a return on investment. I mean, it's just dumb if you think about that. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to prove that? You know what I mean? And any CEO or anybody that's really going to have any operational decision to really buy it, they're not going to say, show me the return on investment, because they're not going to believe the stuff that you put into it. Because a lot of our stuff is really hard to measure. Is it going to time, incidents? You're going to really tie to that stuff? I mean, anybody who buys that is naive, you know? Now, I do think folks that I've seen that are more successful with this will go to folks with a problem. And they're saying, I got to fix a problem. And here's how I'm going to fix the problem. And so what's my problem? By the way, my problem, then this goes, I think, to some interesting stuff around we're evolving in terms of what problem. Like we used to say, my problem is I need automation. Also not really a problem. You know what I mean? What do you need? You need it to be simpler. To do what? Right? Because I owe you a report every month, and it takes me too long to do it, and it sucks and wasting my time. Like be doing something else. Now you might start to get to something where you have, you know what I mean? You talk about a problem like that, or hey, we are hurting way too many people. I have no idea why. We should try and get some information from the field and try to figure that out. Okay, now you're, you know what I mean? Now people can get behind you and say, well, how are we going to measure that? Or what are we going to do? And all that. So I find that if folks will start with a problem, real problem, and be really honest, the operations folks are much more likely to get on board. But if we start the other way, it's a problem. So hopefully I didn't go on too long there, but that's just the point. I'd love your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, when we were talking last week, you know, you mentioned, you know, friend or foe, you know, changing your relationship with operations, right? Because a lot of times the safety department is not necessarily seen as the friend of operations, and so maybe that's you know, kind of what you're talking a little bit about. And if you have any advice, the safety professionals out there, you can speak to that, then I think that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. Gabe, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, you said a few things that really kind of, you know, my ears kind of pricked up a little bit. One is that, you know, when you're talking about selling technology to the safety space or the safety professional, I've always thought that the safety profession as a whole is probably about 10 years behind technologically of where general business is. So that's, first of all, that is a massive hurdle to get over. If you tell them, hey, I'm going to tell you a piece of software or some analytics or some sort of technology like that, they're used to dealing with PPE that you can literally hold in your hand or put on your body. That's a big leap conceptually to go to something like that. And then what you were talking about with ROI, I never quite thought about it that way, with the idea that, okay, I can put together all these figures for you, but are you actually going to believe it when you talk to the CEO or the CFO? Are you actually going to buy this, or do you just figure I'm making this up? Or so you do have some serious hurdles to get over it when you're selling a solution like this or providing a solution like this to the safety professional. That's definitely very difficult.
Well, and I think if you, and all that stuff that's implied in what Gabe just said, which by the way, I'll tie back to what your question was, Scott, in a second, is if we could just, I find that if folks will just flip it a little bit and be honest, but part of the reason that they really struggle is operations doesn't make it easy to be honest, to really come forward and say, like, look, I have a problem. Like the safety professional spends much of his time, many of them that I've dealt with, trying to convince people that there's no problems, right? Arguing with people about, because by the way, that's their job, right? They get their value out of that. Like, you know what, my job is to prevent problems and make things go away. So it's kind of counterintuitive to turn around and say, you know what, we've been trying to do this. I've been trying to get people to give me information and they just won't give it to me. It's really hard. I don't know what to do. That is hard for many safety professionals to do, to say that. But the ops guys are really waiting for them to say that because they know it. And the way they change their relationship is by just being bold and just saying, we have to fix this. This is dumb. I thought this was a good idea to get this up, but it's just dumb. We're not getting any, we got to do something different. We got to collect different information. We got to figure out how we're going to use it. And let's figure that out first. And then we'll get to the tech, and we're going to need a tool of some sort to do it. But it's I always tell people the tool is the tail and the process is the dog, right? They work in that order. So I got to make this better because this sucks for all of us. But when you do that, you do a couple of different things at the same time. Number one, you build your credibility with your boss, which changes the nature of the relationship. And number two, I find most ops people are just really waiting for the safety guy to say, this is busted. And by the way, it's not busted and I'm blank on ideas. It's busted and I'm going to fix it. And that gives you the credibility that when you go in and you start talking about numbers or ROI or whatever, you have what you need in terms of credibility for them to believe you, and you can argue with it, as opposed to you're going there and now everybody's arguing about stuff that gets distracted and it's frustrating. So by the way, that's back to the other thing you said before. So what happens? I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not going to go back up there and get my head handed to me. I don't want that. And so I don't do it. It's easier. I just keep, you know what I mean? I need PPE. I can live without the software. If I'm going to lose a fight and I got to argue with you about hard hat shapes, okay, I'll take the hard hat shape thing. And I never get around the technology, but I suffer as a safety professional because I got to put up all the crap of trying to make the reports work and it doesn't really do it. And then you're yelling at me and then somebody gets hurt and they say, how come we didn't prevent it? And I didn't have any data. You know what I mean? So we have to, I think that's why this is an important, we got to help them maybe think about this slightly differently and how they approach the conversation, and maybe they'll have more success in terms of, I guarantee you will have more success at getting what you want.
Yeah. I think, there's definitely some themes running through, even though we've only done a handful of episodes of Safeonomics, there's a theme running through. And, going back to our first discussion with Corey Pitzer, Corey and I are doing a series on Deming's principles, and he's really encouraging safety professionals to think of safety the way that Deming's thought about quality control, quality management, and that it is part of operations, not separate from operations. And even when we spoke with Abby Ferry, she talked about how she would just poke her head in, and give a shout out to the ops folks. And the first few times she did that, they were like, who is she and what's she doing here? And then pretty soon it was like, oh well, she seems committed, she's sticking around, and she's asking us what challenges we have and how she could help. And now she became a de facto part of operations and solving those problems. So I think that I'm hearing something similar, is that we should be thinking of ourselves as part of operations, part of that process that you mentioned, and not something separate. So becoming friend to operations, not being the foe that's holding things up or making things difficult.
Yeah, and Barry, you brought up something that was kind of interesting to me too, is that you don't just come in with the problem as the safety professional. If you have a solution that you can bring to the table, and you're probably bringing up a problem that other people already see that maybe has not been addressed in the past, but everybody knows it's there, or a lot of people know it's there. You're probably not, as the safety professional, the first one to bring this to somebody's attention.
Right.
But if you come in with a solution as well, whether that is PPE or a technology solution, you can actually resolve that problem. I think anybody can pick and poke at an issue, but if you don't actually provide a solution, you're just going to kind of tick people off in doing that.
Gabe, that's exactly right. And that's how you change the relationship. And that's how you get this peer-to-peer. Like, nobody, to your point, people would appreciate you coming to say, look, this is a problem. And then I'm going to fix the solution. And then I'm just going to send you a receipt that it's done. Like that's what they want, because everybody's got their own set of problems. They don't need new ones, but they're really happy when people, or when their team members, and it's come to them with this elephant in the room kind of stuff. And here's some options to fix it. The other thing that you were kind of getting at, Gabe, is many times people forget to develop the success plan before they get started.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? So go to operations and say, we have a problem. I think our inspections suck. All right. We can't, I don't know what's happening in the field. The people won't give us any information. How many times have you heard that? Right.
Yeah.
Field won't give me any information. So but by the way, just start there. Okay. Field won't give me any information. Well, let's think through, well, why won't they give me any information? And without getting into all the details, there's some stuff about that, and what could we do differently that would encourage them to give us some information. Okay, that's good. And then, but before you go buy the technology, so that's the problem, right? And then here's what, then go to them and say, like, look, here's how we're going to know if we're getting better, right? So get the operations guys to buy in up front before we do this. What are we trying to accomplish, and how would we know if it was successful? Then get to, how is the technology going to help us measure whether or not that was accomplished, or how is technology going to help us actually achieve that? That is a much different, now they're on the same side of the table, as opposed to you coming and saying, hey, I'd like to buy an inspection piece of software. Why? How do I know it's going to work?
Right.
What about all these issues? Well, now you're arguing, you know what I mean? So you kind of know all that stuff that we just talked about. Well, just get that up front. Changes the nature of the way they view you and how you think about problems.
That's funny. One of the first things that I would usually try to find out if I was going to pitch an idea to an executive or to a different department was that I'd try to find out what their you know, are they paid on a certain bonus structure? What are the metrics that they're using that are actually going to help their compensation? So if it's sales, if it's production levels, if it's lowering waste or those kind of things, everybody's got some sort of metrics that they are working on through in order to get paid. So if I could frame it up in such a way where it's like, hey, I have a solution for you that's actually going to help you in these kind of things, I'll let them do the math in their head that, oh, if it allows me to increase production by this much, then I'm going to hit my quota and then I can get paid this way. So now you're speaking a common language. But yeah, I think you're spot on in looking at it as being a partnership and not an adversarial relationship when you're trying to bring a solution to the table.
Let them be no, I was going to say, let them be a part of defining success, and let them be a part of working through the problem. I think too often, again, we feel like we have to have all the answers, as opposed to saying, I have a method for us to solve the problem together, and I don't have to have all the answers, but I have a method to get us to the answers, right? But there's that role, that's this perception of what their role is, or how they personally perceive their role, and how operations perceives them. And if we don't break that unwritten contract, we can't break out of the problem. We can't change the nature of the relationship, and so then the stuff doesn't get done.
Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting and something that everybody needs to consider, before they bring technology in. There's so many, and I think we'll get to it as well, but there's so many failures, so many catastrophe kind of stories out there of bringing in technology and having it fail, and the expense and time but just to kind of break it down, maybe as a starting point, because we've been talking about it a fair bit. I think in my experience, I've seen people believe that bringing in software, as an example, will solve a problem for them where they don't necessarily have a well-defined process in place. And so in your experience, do you have to have that process well-defined? Is the technology facilitating business processes, or is it bringing in new processes that maybe didn't exist before?
This is a very rich topic. It's obviously it's a depends kind of a situation, right? It all depends on what the word process means in this context, but let's just take an example again of inspections. And by the way, I want to talk about conversations if we can, but at some point, but because it's super important. But the thing is, like, okay, inspections. Well, do you ask people to collect information today? That if you don't, then that you should do that before you automate it. You know what I mean? Like, what do you, and if you, is everybody agreed of what these are, by the way, there's elephants in the room there's a bunch of herd of them about to come in. Is that what you call elephants? A herd is a gaggle or whatever it is?
I was
A
thinking more.
murder of elephants.
Yeah,
But,
I was thinking more. It's going to be like can open worms everywhere very
yeah,
soon.
exactly.
So-
But it's like, yeah, we're gonna do, to your point about process though, like, okay, yeah, so we collect information. What information? What are we gonna do with the information? Right? This is the biggest problem people have with safety stuff, with the inspection stuff, is they're collecting it and nobody knows what to do with it. And it turns out, by the way, it's sort of a pet peeve of mine, we're collecting all the wrong stuff. Why? Because we took a paper-based process that we thought was a pretty good idea and we just automated it, and we realized, because that was all we could get people to do, by the way. I invented that concept 2001 on a Palm Pilot, so believe me, as a joke, I put my kids through college building forms on devices which I now abhor, I hate it. But anyway, second point is we collected a bunch of symptoms, right? I have a bunch of housekeeping stuff. You don't have a housekeeping problem. You have you didn't buy out the job right problem, or you have people who don't care problem, or you have people jammed on top of each other and they can't get their stuff done problem. But that's not the information that they're giving you. So the point of your question is, I do think we learned this by having technology to help us see, oops, we were only collecting symptoms. So in this case, it's informing us to change the process of what information do we actually want to collect from the field. So that part is good. But you're wise to say, before you start buying any technology, do I have an activity that I know what I'm going to do with the information once if your thing is not just to simplify something, that I know what I'm going to do with the information in order to be able to achieve some objective and deliver some value.
I think that's so important too, because we've had situations like this too with some of our clients where they are looking at a new piece of technology, or where they don't have a process in place. Like, let's say they want to go into vending, and they get sold this solution of, yeah, it'll show you all these reports and all these analytics and things like that. And my comment to the client is usually, okay, well, do you have a process in place to solve these issues once you get the information? And usually the answer is no. They just know that they're spending way too much on PPE, or people aren't using the right PPE. And then and so my comment after that is, well, okay, you'll get a bunch of really neat reports that will show you where you're losing money, and you still won't be able to do anything about it. So essentially, instead of bleeding out without knowing what was happening, you get to watch yourself bleed out and still not be able to do anything about it.
Right. Wow. Sorry. No. Yeah. And it's like, what problem do you want to solve? And can you, by the way, you can also flip it, right? On a positive thing, Scott, sorry, this is that, but Gabe makes a really good point, which is to say, do we have a hypothesis? Like, so we have a hypothesis that that we're bleeding out on this particular point. Can we guess at the hypothesis, and can we use technology to validate our hypothesis more quickly and therefore fix our problem? So you can start, like, and I say the same thing on inspections. It's like, why do we have to do there's a time and a place for a random inspection, which is where things started, like, a long time ago in industrial world, and we did all these things, they moved them over, and they got moved over into a lot of these sort of dynamic worlds where people do inspections kind of random. But there's lots of different ways to do them. They don't have to be blind. You can just say, I'm worried this month about falls, and just go send people out to do falls because I'm worried about falls, because I'm going to go fix fall problems. For whatever reason, you want to go fix fall problems. That's allowed. So directed, be focused, do what you want to be able to do. It doesn't have to be some magic process. It's just like, have a hypothesis of what it is you're trying to figure out. I don't know what to figure out. Okay, you can do that. Or to your point, I'm really worried about buying too much or too little of X. Great. But have a plan, have a problem, have a success plan. How do I want to do it? You'll end up in a better place, even if it isn't. And by the way, oftentimes you'll end up in a different place than where you thought.
Yeah.
When I had this hypothesis, collected this data. Oops. Didn't answer what I thought, but it answered something else. Good for you. Move on. Right? Don't be upset about it.
Yeah. No, and I think that's important. And can layer in a couple questions here, but one is that hopefully things are changing as far as technology adoption, the ease of technology. It's come a long way in the last 10 or 15 years, but there's been a lot of failures, and I think it's because people have this expectation built up in their mind, and when that expectation isn't achieved, then you lose a bunch of momentum, you lose a bunch of buy-in, and the technology project kind of fails. So and I'm going to tie in as well that bring in a new system, and you run the report, and you're like, oh, the report's wrong, and 9 times out of 10 the report is just math.
Right.
It's just reporting the information that you've asked it to. It's the data that you're collecting is wrong, and so to me, you have to go in with this mindset that it is going to be iterative, just like you said, Barry. You're going to learn as you go, and you're going to need to modify and be flexible. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about setting those expectations up front, and then how to iterate when you get the unexpected results, or at least what you've seen in your experience.
Yeah, that's an interesting, by the way, it's a very interesting sort of even another thready thing, right? So by the way, just a, whatever you want to call it, the name of our company is called FactorLab. It may or may not be obvious to some of the people that are on here, but factors, right, or complex problems have many factors, got it. And you should treat it like a lab, right? So you should treat your data stuff, your safety data stuff like a laboratory, meaning have a hypothesis, go test out if it's right or wrong. Don't get too emotional about it. It's okay. Don't get too married to it, because it's a complicated world that we live in. It's a very, very complicated problem to solve, predicting a serious injury or fatality. Anybody that tells you anything to the contrary is a liar. It's a very complicated problem. There's many things that go into it. So you got to treat it as a lab. And so anyway, that's the spirit of this whole thing. But I think I tell people, don't do one thing. When you start a technology project, even if you want to do 50, you have 50 processes and you're trying to integrate them and whatever, please don't try and do that all at once. Just pick one thing. Get better. I want to get better at my observation process. Okay, that's what you want to get better at. Great. And when you say get better, what do you mean? You want more people to participate in it? You want to increase the quality of it? What does that mean? You know what I mean? And why? How would you know? What value are they going to get out of doing it? And by the way, that's a big one. The biggest reasons, by the way, I'll ask you guys, why doesn't the field adopt technology? So technology is free. All technology is free. It magically lines up with all your processes. Why doesn't the field use it?
I think it's because it's different. I think people in general have they like it. It's kind of like the object at rest stays at rest. If you have a pattern or process that you were already operating in, if there's a change to that, even if it's the idea that it'll make things better, it's still a change. And so there tends to be some resistance to having that change happen.
I want to build on that one, but that's good. So yeah, changes. Change. I'll stop with that. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was going to say the why. A lot of times I think that people are asked to use new systems without understanding why are they doing this? Why are they taking on more responsibility? Why are they having to do more administrative work? And yeah, I mean, human nature is to resist change at all costs. I mean, we want to conserve our energy, conserve our brain power, because we never know when we're going to get our next meal from a evolutionary perspective, right? So why would we go and take on more responsibility, more work without having a clear defined why, right?
That's exactly right. And so the three things that I tell people to think about, this is the three axis tab, exactly that. Number one, these are no particular order. Value. What am I going to get out of this? Me personally, not you, me. To your point, you asking me to change, what am I getting? And is it easier for me? Is it, that's a big one. So if you don't have any, that why, resistance, all that. There's another really, really big one. Trust. probably the biggest if I think about it.
Yeah.
You want me to give you information that at some level is going to put me at risk. No thanks. Right? I got to do something extra. I call it discretionary energy. I have to do something extra to give you something that might cost me consequences. I'll pass. Right? Only if I'm a particular, you know what I mean? Like it's a very small number of people. And then the third thing you got to ring out is it hard? Look, I can't, you don't have to convince me about, by the way, stop selling people on stuff and trying to convince them. It's like trying to convince people who don't want to stop smoking to stop smoking. It's like, stop it. People have to have their own reasons for this and they don't like it, but you've got to find, so I'll change when I'm ready to change. And if I'm ready to change, reduce the barriers for me to change. There's a guy, Dr. BJ Fogg that's out there. Yeah. If you've heard it, y'all know BJ?
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. So BJ and I go back, but anyway, he's a great guy, but BJ's a super smart guy. I think he's one of the best thinkers on this topic. BJ will tell you, remove resistance, right? If you want Barry to eat better, put pre-chopped celery at the top shelf of the refrigerator, because it just makes it easier for Barry to make better decisions. It's just the way we are. It goes back to the energy stuff. So back to all this stuff, as you think about these, I'm going to do one thing, and I want to implement it and make it work. Pick one thing, make it easy for them, make it clear what the value is, and show them, don't tell them, that they can trust you. That what you're going to do with the information is going to be in their best interest. And that's all part of your success plan. You do that, and that works. People find positive, it's just like everything else. Okay, great. I can walk a block. Now I can walk 2 blocks. Now maybe I'll jog half a block. You know what I mean? And you can get a little positive momentum behind it, you'll have better success. Do the opposite, you're going to get the opposite.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Barry, I wanted to circle back to a comment that you made earlier. You brought up conversations. And I feel like this, trust has a big part of that in having those kind of conversations. And what I've seen with safety professionals a lot of times is that they're kind of stuck in the middle in their organizations. So they are responsible for helping operations do their job, but operations doesn't want the help. I've been doing this for a long time. Don't tell me how to do my job just because you have a clipboard and that kind of thing. And then management is kind of breathing down safety is next, saying, hey, we need to reduce risk, we need to increase productivity, all these things. And then they're under supported. Maybe they don't have enough people, they don't have enough money in their budget. And so it's a very lonely situation. But in all of those areas, if there is a lack of trust from management to safety and safety to operations and back and forth, those conversations are going to be really hard to have between all those different areas. And you've got a safety professional that is unfortunately caught in the middle. So talk to us a little bit about how trust and conversation and moving the safety agenda forward all come into play.
Yeah, it was a bunch that was wrapped up in that, Gabe.
Yeah.
No,
I'm taking Scott's tactic of bundling questions
at once.
Yeah, I mean, if we had magic answer to that, we would, whatever. But I think it's such an important topic, and I would say it goes back to where some of the stuff we talked about a little bit earlier, which is the one way to build trust in your conversations is to talk about the elephants in the room, right? We're as safety professionals, too often times we're conditioning operations in a manner that doesn't serve us well, and erodes trust as opposed to builds trust. But we do it it's done because people think that we have to. And I'll give you an example: the daily planning activity, right? The daily planning people. Oh, that's a really good idea. Okay, that's a really good idea. What do we do? Well, we have to go and we have to fill out this form, and then and people call them pre-test plans or JHAs or THAs or whatever you call them. People call it different stuff, but they go and they do this thing. And they ask all the field to, they'll have some guy fill out a form, and then they'll have people line up, and then they'll sign the form, right? And then everybody will go to work. Safety guy comes along. He says, oh, my job is to make sure you filled out the form really well. So what does he do? He finds the crew leader, tells him to go get his form, climb down off your ladder, or come over what you're doing, you go get your form. And then it's gonna be quiz time. I'm gonna look at this and I'll ask you stuff and then I'll coach you, right? Are you building a relationship when you do that? No, right? And you ask those people, and by the way, if you in the office, or even the safety guys, if we said, hey, look, here's the deal. Every morning, I'm going to call you into the conference room. And I'm going to fill out a form while you sit there and watch me. And then I'm going to have you sign the form. And if any one of you gets hurt, right, I'm going to come back and read this form to you and say, how come you got hurt? Because we filled out this form. People would quit. They wouldn't do it. It's disrespectful. It doesn't build trust. It's horrible. But by the way, this is back to your question. I haven't lost you. Every day it happens over and over and over and over again. It doesn't build trust. Now, let's flip it. What if safety professional, on the other hand, said, you know what, this is dumb. This is not respectful. I don't need you to do this for me. I need you to do this for ourselves. And instead of, by the way, us focused on filling out forms, maybe we'll fill out a form, but let's have a conversation. And by the way, this is lead you to some stuff. I'm going to show you, not tell you, what kind of conversation we should have. I'm going to participate today, not tell you, not make you, I call it the dancing monkey phenomena. So you're going to dance like a monkey. I'll tell you whether or not I like your conversation. If you don't like it, then I'll make you dance again until I do like it. It doesn't build trust. But why does a safety professional do that? He's not doing that to be mean. He's saying this is the only way that I know how to help you solve the problem. It's not. Stop. Say, wait a minute, we're going to do this. Let's all define up front. This is how you build trust, by the way, and how you build relationships with people. Do we want to keep doing this? No. Are we getting, no. Is this a waste of time? Yes. Trust, credibility, great. Let's think about what we could do instead. What if we all just took 5 minutes and we had a conversation about what we want? And I'll lead. You tell me if it's valuable or not.
Right.
Let's sit down. I thought this was dumb, so I came up with 5 things that I think would be a high impact conversation. You, Mr. Field people who are in the room, Mr. Leaders up or down, do you think these are 5 elements of a high impact conversation? Right? Should we do this? Should we strive this? Hey, why would these be hard? So these are and by the way, if you want to take it from the pre-task plan process or the daily plan, and you want to take that now to the inspection process, same thing. Why are we doing this? Is this really what we want?
Right.
Is this helping us prevent problems? Or is this just you entertaining me to convince me that you found and fixed a problem? Right? I know this is going to be heresy to a lot of people, and I'm not saying we don't want to find and fix problems, and I'm not saying people shouldn't share it. But what I'm saying is, if you want to build trust and you want to have different conversations with operations people, we have to change the dialogue and say some of the things that we've been doing, we need to shift. And I got an idea how we can do them better. And I got an idea about how we could use technology to get more out of it. That puts you on a peer-to-peer relationship with the operational leaders. And I believe I know is really what they want to hear.
Yeah. So here's what I love about your comments on that too, is that regardless of the size of the team or the organization, all of those concepts can apply. You can, as long as there's at least one more person that is in your organization, you can have a conversation. You probably will need to build trust. It's almost way too straightforward, but it seems like the simplest things are the hardest to implement. So to have those kinds of conversations where you build trust, as you said, regardless of whether it's with the executive management or the operations team, the operations person, I mean, I don't care how small the organization is, you will need to bridge those kinds of gaps and build that communication, that trust, those conversations. And I like that you went through your whole explanation of this and the word technology only showed up at the very end. There's no explanation with any of that, because you're right, the problem usually stems from trust, from interpersonal relationships, from conversations, and that's so critical from a business standpoint, because there are still people that are working in this organization together. You have to have those problems defined. You have to have the trust that's in there before you even bring up any sort of a solution.
Yeah. I was getting flashbacks to oh, sorry, Barry, did you
No, finish. I want to come back to something Gabe said in a second, but it's okay. Wait, no problem.
No, you go ahead, because I'm gonna derail this conversation. So
Well, I just want to point out something that I forgot to say earlier, but I think is really important, and Gabe brought it up. I'm changing first before I'm asking you to change.
There you go.
right.
That's how we do it. It's not, so none of that was like, hey, you're a dummy, you don't know how to do a conversation. That's not it. It is like, I'm doing things that are leading you. I created this, whether you personally created the pre-test plan process is not the point. I've been perpetuating it. I've been conditioning you to think this is what I want. If you go to people and say, I've been thinking about this and I want to make this better. Here's what I'm willing to do. That's people are, like you say, whether you have one person or you have a bunch of people, you're going to get a much different response. And it takes a little courage, but I'm telling you, people are really just waiting for us to say, because they don't want to say it, because they don't want to be difficult. They just want to do their job. You know what I mean? Like I'm lining and signing this thing because I've given up, or I'm just trying to get along.
Right.
And I'm not going to fight you because I want my job. But if you come to me and say, we could fix this, the vast majority of the people are like, thank goodness. How can I help you? Right? Now, there's always going to be some crank, but whatever. You don't worry about those people. They'll get sorted out by their peers. And,
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to go on too long on that,
Well,
but
what if I'm the cranky one?
it's okay.
Yeah.
You'll get dealt with by your peers.
Exactly.
I was going to say this, like I was having flashbacks to 2010 and really where the idea for Safeopedia came from, when we were sitting around a table with the, VP of Health and Safety for the owners and then the, senior safety professionals for the contractors on site. And they were saying just, exactly that. It's like, hey, if you want us, if the requirement for us to be on this job site is to have a certain, injury frequency rate, that's the injury frequency rate that we're going to have. And that's the reality. Like we're going to bury the bodies in order to make sure that we hit that number and we keep working. But if we really want to solve this problem, let's step back and let's talk about what's really important here. Is it that injury frequency rate, or is it keeping people safe on the job site, and how do we do a better job at that, rather than just hitting the numbers? So it's again, like I said, it was just having a flashback to that conversation. But I wanted, we've been asking you a bunch of loaded questions, so I wanted to just
had no softballs here.
I just wanted to throw a really simple, that maybe this is the softball question, for you, but with technology, just the proliferation of technology with Chat GPT and machine learning and AI, what for safety professionals who are sitting out there thinking about not just maybe how to bring safety or technology into their organization, but thinking about their career development and how to be in the front runners of safety professionals within their industries. What kind of advice do you have for them? Do they need to become data scientists? Do they need to become super sophisticated when it comes to understanding technology? How should they kind of view themselves as forward-looking safety professionals?
Yeah, thanks for opening this opportunity. I think this is, there's like lots of threads here, but the first is, this is a fantastic time to be a safety professional and thinking about technology. I think a lot of times, somebody mentioned it a little bit earlier that, we're safety profession has always been 10 years behind. I think in this case, I like to tell people, safety is not going to be last this time. And the reason I'm saying that, and again, if I were, and I tell this to people all the time, and if you can hear this, this is my message. Language is knowledge. And our business is all about language. Technology is allowing us, never before in the history of mankind have we been able to collect, synthesize, organize, and generate language like we can today. It is happening right before our eyes. So as you think about your organization, think about language. Like, how do I shift from forms? How do I shift from boxes that do not give me the context and the information that I can, to gathering language that lets me understand what's really happening? And then I think the big part of that comes next is, what am I listening for? We've thought, and it's the same conversation we had earlier, we thought for a long time that we were really, and many of you probably think, oh, if I could listen for language. Well, I'll ask you the question. If you were going to listen for language, what kind of language would most safety professionals be listening for? What have we conditioned ourselves to listen for?
I'd say anything related to injuries or risk.
Okay. Scott?
Yeah, no, I think that's what they're, I think that they're, it's the kind of, you touched on it earlier. It's sort of the challenges, the problems, the negative, aspects of what's going on in the workplace, where we're not, you're not tying off, you're not, wearing the proper PPE. Those are the things that I think, from a compliance perspective, they've been trained to, we've been trained to kind of focus in on.
That's right. I think if most of us would put it into sort of the hazard/behavior category. You know what I mean? What are the hazards? What hazards are people talking about? Maybe what are the controls? And I think the opportunity, what we find out now, and what the promise of technology is, letting us look beyond that. Once you're going to hear the what's, you can begin to think about the whys. So yeah, like whether it's injuries or whatever. Okay, so you're talking about our risks. The real question is why? Why are people talking about what they're talking about? And why are they not talking about other things? And what do I really want them talking about? Now, what I'm going to say to you is, like, if you think about this, there's many can hear me are going to go like, oh, got it. But we've never been able to do it before. And it's this concept of like precursors. So if I want to talk, I know that a precursor comes before a hazard or an injury, but what does that language actually sound like? How do people normally talk about it? And how do the better people talk about it? How does it come out naturally? How do my better leaders creating an environment where people want to talk about them? So change, you know what I mean? So we care about change. How often does change come up? How do people talk about change? What's the right way to talk about change? What sorts of change? These are fatigue. How do we talk about fatigue? How do I ask you if you're tired or not? We've never, and if you ask me to fill out a form, I will never, are you tired today? Dumb, never going to work.
Right.
In a daily planning conversation or in a follow-up, a kind of a thoughtful debrief after an inspection or an observation, if you just listened to those conversations or use technology to listen to those and capture those conversations, we can now begin to get at less about the individual conversation and more about the environment for a conversation. Do my leaders even understand what a precursor is? Do my leaders even think about, when they talk about in the morning, not only the hazards, but the things that would lead up to the hazards, or those things, or how I respond to change, right? So this is the promise of technology, to help us move beyond what we have been limited to think about, because we can capture it and synthesize it and organize it in ways that we could not in the past. And that allows the safety, the young, old, doesn't matter. It allows them to look at these problems through a different lens and imagine solutions that were unimaginable before. And that is what's going to transform our industry. It's not going to be a better thing to give me a simpler way to collect falls. because that's not my problem. My problem is, why would my leaders create an environment where it was a good idea to that guy to do that? And because I can fix that systemically. And that's the role of the safety professional, not to whack moles, but to figure out, learn from the organization, when you use the HOP stuff, right? How do I create a learning organization to figure out, like, why in the world would we build a safety system that didn't have the capacity to support that? That's the promise of technology.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing where we're at right now, and it's exciting and scary at the same time, because the computers can look at data objectively without our bias, and kind of give us information that, like you said, we've never had access before. And I think, what I heard, and what I believe is it's the safety professionals who can ask the better questions, right? Who can probe a little deeper, who can be a little bit more creative in analyzing that data and asking the questions to refine it and improve the organization. And I think that people that are in safety, generally are there because they are people, they want to keep people safe. They believe what they're doing is beneficial to the organization and people's well-being. And yeah, it's like digging in, getting creative, asking those questions is what's going to push them forward in their careers, and leveraging technology, not becoming data scientists, or not becoming super proficient with technology, but becoming better at asking those questions.
I think that, Gabe, you were going to say something, and I'll chime in a second.
Yeah, what I liked about this whole comment about the use of technology, you brought up how technology and language, that's where knowledge, where they all intersect, and allows you to build those relationships with people. So even one of our past guests, Josh Russell, was talking about how he had been in the same organization in a different, interfacing with different people at all different levels of management, operations, and he's got a lab that he works with, and everybody is, in some cases, literally speaking a different language. I mean, from a, it's so hard to try and bridge those gaps. But if you're using technology or any other tool to try and translate from let's say management to operations, or from safety to operations, those kinds of things, it allows you to start not just imparting knowledge, but even gaining knowledge from those different areas. So I think that's amazing. And the fact that you can actually define and redefine a culture in your organization based on the use of language, the sharing of knowledge in it, and then having technology just facilitate that and be really the tool that it's supposed to be to build that. I think you could see a lot of organizations just growing so much better, not just in safety, but operationally as well.
You just tied like a bunch of our themes together. So it's very interesting that you said that. And like, let's go to Scott's thing. It all goes back to, what am I listening for in these things, which is reframing the question, right? And it isn't like these big machines are going to fly in from Mars and take over the world and tell us how to do safety. It's not like that. The leaders who are listening to this conversation, you get to define what you want the machine to pay attention to. They're dumb things. We train them to do things. And you could say, I want to listen to all my daily plan. Let's just, like, shameless plug. We care a lot about daily planning conversations and listening to those daily planning conversations. I think that's a big deal, and people should do that. But the question is, like, what do you listen for? And to your point, back to culture, I think it's a big deal to listen for care and trust in a conversation. Well, I bet a lot of people right now are going, well, what the heck does that sound like? That's a good question. Now, I have lots of thoughts on that you can get to, but we can start with, please, thank you, nice job, great to see you, thanks for yesterday. So if you're going to say, like, how many times do people in your organization today say that in the morning? And how many times would you like that to be said? And what are you going to do to create the environment where the chances of that are increased? And then listen and see if it works. That's the promise of technology. It isn't, you know, it's like, and it's all the stuff around that makes the difference. So, and by the way, a lot of people, I didn't realize this when we started this before. Please and thank you, and the willingness, the ability, and that someone would create an environment where people will do that transcends the individual conversation. I don't just say please and thank you right now. I'll probably say please and thank you later.
Right.
And what does please and thank you mean? Well, please and thank you means you're not a jerk. And I got big news for you. All the research shows people don't like to work for jerks. So what's the problem with that? The problem with that is people don't give jerks bad news. What's the problem with that? In our space, organizations who avoid bad things create environments where people give them bad news. Right? So how many jerks are you having right now that aren't giving, their people aren't talking to them after this meeting about something they need to be talking about, asking a question, feeling vulnerable, don't know what to do, blah, 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 blah. That's the crap that hurts people. That's the stuff that we get away with 99% of the time. And then, oh, crap. That one time I didn't ask, I wasn't prepared, something changed, shit happened. And then we, you know, then we go to all this other crap. You know, it's so to your point, Gabe, and back to your point, Scott, listening, deciding, like using technologies we couldn't get them before. I can get these conversations. Okay, well, what am I going to listen for? Well, you can listen for hazards if you want. And there's nothing wrong with that for sure. Like absence of information is almost as important as, or maybe more important than the information. Got it. But I would encourage you to be open-minded and say, wow, what do I really want to know? Precursors, care, planning, work, trust, scope. Yeah. It's a new frontier for us. And I think it is, telling you, it is going to transform the role of the safety professional and how we think about and imagine solutions to solve our most complex problems.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that might be a great place to kind of tie up the conversation today. I also just reflecting, thinking, maybe that's why my team doesn't share anything with me on my I got to use.
You just got outed, Scott.
Please and thank you a little bit more. Maybe I'm a big jerk and I didn't realize. I think, in all seriousness, it is. I think the most exciting time to be in environmental health and safety because of technology. You know, I think because of the shift in culture, and I mean, you used to have to be practically a programmer, right, to bring in you know, new technology into your organization, and now that's all taken care of. You just need to know, like, I mean, we've seen ChatGPT and what it can do. So now, as a safety professional, it's asking those better questions, listening to that information, and I think it will definitely shift the profession going forward. So thank you so much for joining us today. Barry, Gabe, do you have anything closing remarks you wanted to add?
Not really. I think you and Barry wrapped it up well. But Barry, for our 5, maybe 6 listeners that we are having now, where can they get in touch with you, and where can they learn more about FactorLab?
So to Scott's mom, I want to make sure that she knows my dessert thing for Canadian Thanksgiving. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure that that's organized. And then Gabe, FactorLab, FactorLab.com. That's the, you know, go there. There's a little thing. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You know, you can find us there. If you want to get a hold of me, you can reach me at Barry, BARRYN at FactorLab.com. You know, we appreciate
Awesome.
it. And we're not, I guess that's one thing my thing is we are very big on trying to help us all move forward with these opportunities. And we're very open to sharing and learning. And we think if you're interested in like this language space, we're very interested in the dialogue with everybody who's working on this and trying to learn together. So if you're working on something, come tell us about it. We want to learn too, and we're happy to share, because we think it's a really exciting time for everybody. But it's also early days, and so
Very
it's all
cool.
learn together. So thanks so
Awesome.
much. Thank you both for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I was saying to Gabe earlier that I mean, in my role, I talk to so many companies and people within those organizations, and when we first connected, it was it was like we need to get you on the podcast. We need to interview. We need to share your experience, your knowledge with our audience. So I would encourage whoever's listening. To definitely reach out to Barry. He's super approachable, super easy to talk to, and I think that those comments that kind of wrapped up the conversation. I think there's probably a lot of safety professionals are out there at that transition point in their career. They're a little bit right in the technology. They're not quite ready to embrace it, and I would just encourage you to reach out to Barry. Pick his brain, get his ideas, his opinions. He won't try to sell you anything,
Right.
out of the gate, maybe down the road once you're ready, but definitely give you some great advice on how to move forward in your career, as that forward-looking safety professional.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Gabe. Super nice to meet you guys and spend some time with you. So thanks very much.
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks.
you're very welcome. Thank you.
Bet.
All right.